Hello, Max Wright here, responding to the response from Justicar regarding his original statement, which was his original question to libertarians, which is, why do you guys think taxation is theft? I gave a rebuttal video, which was, I provided an analogy. It was like, imagine you're in a school cafeteria, little Johnny's lining up to buy some food from the cafeteria, and there's a bully beside the cafeteria saying, if you want to buy some food there, give me $1 as a tax or whatever, give me $1 as a bribe, or else I'm going to use my fist to stop this transaction taking place. The bully, the cafeteria owner wants to sell the food to little Johnny. Little Johnny wants to buy the food from the cafeteria. Third party steps in. I'm going to use force and prohibit this transaction from taking place unless I get paid my reward. And so, I don't know, it's an analogy. I think it's a reasonably close analogy. But rather than focus on that, Justicar kind of steps sideways, and the whole premise there is obviously this third party prohibiting other people from acting and using force to do so. Rather than look at the analogy and try and get value out of it, try your very best to try and understand your opponent's point of view and get value out of their argument. He decided to focus on the fact that there were two components to the bill. There was a component in paying for the food and a component to paying for the tax to the bully, whatever you want to call that. And so he came up with the analogy, it's, aha, I've got libertarians. What about when you go to a restaurant and it says on the menu that in order to, at parties over 6 or 8 people, will have a gratuity included. It's like, there's the food and a gratuity included. Aha, libertarians must be against that. Just completely not getting the part about the third party. Like, as the restaurant owner, you can choose to sell your food for whatever you wish, and you can use any formula you want. You can demand 2 silver coins and a peacock as payment for dinner, and it would be perfectly fine. The formula by which the product owner uses to create a price to sell his good is completely irrelevant. How many components are in that, shipping and handling or whatever, completely irrelevant. It's a product owner choosing to transact with an individual, and we refer to Justicar's original argument, which is all the terms and conditions of the contract are known up front, therefore there's nothing immoral about it. But the problem is, how can you hear the analogy about the third-party bully? And it's like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Like, you have to try really, really, really hard to ignore the part about the third-party bully interjecting into a peaceful transaction. You have to try really hard to ignore that and to not get the point. And when someone is like that, I've just learned through many, many of these conversations that the reason they ask the questions is to feel good about themselves. They cross their arms, and you can watch in Justicar's lots of his videos. The body language is crossed arms and an absolute refusal to try and see the other person's side, to try and think. So I'm going to leave Justicar's response there. However, in the threads, there was someone supporting Justicar's position, and he did actually further the analogy, so I'd like to go to that. This is a gentleman called thisisinsanity.com, and he offered a few suggestions to improve the analogy which I put forward. The first he said was, just a little bit more information. In my original analogy, I said rather than just take the money off the kids, the bully, he takes the $1 fee just as a straight bribe. He offers some service back, and I use the quick example of he might give the kids a massage or something. But This Is Insanity writes, what if instead of a massage, he uses the money to buy new playground equipment that most kids would use? So the offer is, okay, this is a value judgment by thisisinsanity.com, and I have a different value here. So I would look at like paying tax dollars. So in the state of New York, for example, on average, the governments collect about $40,000 per child per year for the education system. And at the end of high school, like 60% of them are unable, sorry, it was 80% of them were unable to read at an 8th grade level and qualify for like a low-end college or something. So I would argue that $1 for a massage and a complete waste of time is actually a pretty good analogy. But for thisisinsanity.com, he has a different value than me. He actually perceives a lot of value out of government services, and I recognize there's no proof or one way is right and one way is wrong there. I'm just going to take him, we'll just play in his field, which is fine. So we'll say that, let's say the bully provides something of tremendous value, and let's say the kids all want, the vast majority of the kids want a playground, and that the bully is going to provide a playground with all of the dollar fees that he collects. So the first thing to understand is that by definition in the scenario, there are people who do not find value in the playground. If everyone contributes $1, you get a swing set or something. There are people who do not find value in that. And the way we know they do not find value in that is because the bully has to threaten force to get the money from people. Like if someone comes along and says, hey guys, if everyone chips in $1, we get a swing set, and every single person agrees, then there's no use to threaten someone. It's like you don't ask a woman out on a date, she says yes, and then you kidnap her and take her out on a date. Like she's already said yes. The evidence of force and the threats is evidence that there are some people in the crowd that disagree. So that's the only case that we need to look at. We don't need to look at the instance where everybody agrees. The case that we need to look at is where there are some people who disagree. And so if you grant this premise that a group of people can force other people to subsidize the product that they want, well, for starters, as a practical matter, where are you at? Like, every single transaction you take, I would love for someone else to help me pay for it. So what you'll have to look at here is who is the person that gets to decide whether or not a transaction provides enough value to enter into. So let's start with an extreme example. Imagine how ridiculous it would be if a rapist said of his victim, well, she enjoyed it, so it wasn't really rape. Imagine if a mugger said, well, no, I bought that guy over there breakfast and he's homeless, so actually it was a really important thing that I did, that I mugged this person. It was incredible value. When third parties, other people, decide whether or not something is valuable to somebody else, gets to force their way on them, you're just in complete la-la land. Society completely breaks down. The only person who can decide if a transaction is valuable enough to want to get into is the person who's going to spend the money. Now we can improve those two scenarios, because in those two scenarios it's just one person, it's like the mugger and the victim, right? But let's introduce the topic of groups, which is what the poster has here. It goes on to say, what if instead of just standing there of his own will, most kids had voted the bully as responsible for getting new playground equipment? So, okay, so this introduces the concept of does might equal right? Does the majority equal right? And I mean, this is such an old argument. There's just been so many examples. Let's just go to Nazi Germany. Like, just because the majority voted for Hitler and they had the majority support, does that make it acceptable to slaughter other people? Now, I'm going to go with the fact that you're probably going to say no. And the premise is you've got to break down. See, in breaking down the premises, you'll understand, you'll learn why with the bully example, why did your mind even go there? In that instance, like you get the murder wrong, the aggression, the blood, the guts, and those images of those skinny bodies lying there, they're so horrific. The aggression is naked, and you can see it, and you know that aggression is wrong because you see it as visceral, and it's just those images just I don't know, just they break you down emotionally. They do me anyway. It's tragic what went on there. But with the bully and the dollar, it's like, well, there's no bruises, there's no cuts, where's the violence involved? And the violence is not involved because the kids have to acquiesce or starve and don't eat at the cafeteria, go hungry, right? So, but if the kids actually say, no, I'm not paying you $1, bully, get out of the picture, I don't care how many people voted for you here, I want to transact with that guy wants to transact with me, I've got the money, he's got the product, I don't care how many of you people think that it's inappropriate for me to buy food from here, I'm going to do it anyway. And the bully, with the majority's help, there's a whole gang comes and swarms on the kid and just starts beating him to a pulp. No, this will not stand. You cannot resist our force. You give us the tax or we'll continue to beat you. Now when there's the violence is visceral for you and you can see it and there's bruises and cuts involved, hopefully now you can see that, yeah, okay, wait a minute, this went a little bit too far. So you justified it by saying, well, the threat of violence is okay. So long as the threat is so great and the kid has no chance of coming back, that all he's going to do is he's just going to acquiesce. So if people acquiesce to the threat and I don't have to see the violence, then I can see how it's kind of okay because the majority said so. But as soon as the person stands up for themselves and says, no, I'm not going to be bullied, I don't care how many people there are, and the violence steps in, now you've got the pictures. And now you go, oh, okay, that's just wrong. You shouldn't be able to beat somebody. You can't stop. You're infringing on their freedom of transaction. Would be the moral position of that. And so, understand that the threat of force is force. Just because the bully is so big, like in the instance of government taxation, the bully is so big and the punishments are so great, and you're worried about being kidnapped, taken away from your family and thrown in a jail cell, and miss out on your children growing up because you didn't acquiesce to paying the tax. It doesn't mean that it wasn't theft, right? That violence and that kidnapping and taking away from your family, understand that. Imagine how that would be if that was you being taken away because you took objection, you didn't want to pay for wars somewhere, or you didn't want to go and waste money on education that doesn't work, and you wanted to actually provide your child a good education. Understand that the threat of violence is the violence, and see them as the same thing, because they are, because the end point always is the violence. It's just that the threat is so great and so vicious, and you know how bad it's going to be, and you know you can't fight back, that most of us acquiesce, and with good reason. Like we should. I'm not calling the people who acquiesce cowards. I'm saying you should, because it's like being angry at a rape victim who just kind of stops fighting, and there's a rapist has a knife to her throat, says don't fight back, don't do anything. Like do you blame the woman for not fighting back? Of course not. Of course not. She's just doing what she's got to do to survive. Likewise, we all pay our taxes because we just got to do what we have to do to survive, because we don't want to be bullied by psychopaths who come and drag us out of our home and throw us in a cage. But the premise is there, so try and get to that principle. And the final point that thisisinsanity.com brings up is that in Justicar's response video, he did mention something, the tyranny of the majority versus the tyranny of the minority. His argument was that in the case of, let's say the kids at the cafeteria all vote and say, we want to all pay $1 tax at the cafeteria line to get the playground equipment. And so the argument is that there's the tyranny of the majority, which is, some people miss out on not having to pay the fee, right? But the inverse is the tyranny of the minority, meaning let's say the minority get their way and say, we're not going to pay these taxes, and then this playground doesn't happen. Even though the majority of the kids wanted the playground to happen, but it didn't happen because a few people didn't want to, then now we're in this system of the tyranny of the minority. This is just a problem for so many reasons. Let's go back to Nazi Germany. It could have gone down a couple of different ways. One, the way it did go down, the tyranny of the majority said that these people's lives were not worth, they're a hindrance on society. What is it? The Christians, invalids, homosexuals, Jews, they all need to be slaughtered. They're a hindrance on society. And the tyranny, that's an example of the tyranny of the majority. You're saying it could have gone the other way if people's feelings were exactly the same, but they weren't slaughtered. What you're saying is that was a tyranny of the minority, because the majority didn't get what they wanted, which was to slaughter the people that they found inferior. Hopefully no one in their right mind would make the argument that that's a tyranny of the minority. See, in your argument, you present a false dichotomy. There has to be a tyranny this way or a tyranny that way. Not getting your way is tyranny. And that's false. If you want to be an NBA star, but you're crap, you're not a victim of tyranny, right? Tyranny requires the initiation of force against you that you did not initiate. So someone else initiates force against you. That's a requirement for tyranny. So for the kids wanting to buy their lunch at the cafeteria, and the cafeteria owner wanting to sell them lunch, they're acting in a purely voluntary way. They haven't initiated force against anyone in any way, shape or form. Bully over here on the side, with support of the majority of people, he comes in and says, if you guys participate in this transaction, I'm going to demand money. Failure to give me that money means I'm going to initiate force against you. I will use my fists and weapons and the gang and whatever I got to do to extract that dollar out of you, or to prohibit this transaction taking place. See, there's the tyranny. But just because you don't get your way doesn't mean it's a tyranny.